Okay, I think we're rolling. Welcome back to the introductory guide to line of battle. Today I'm going to talk about the order system. It's been a while since I've done one of these videos, probably 6 or 7 months, so bear with me with the camera work and the editing and all that. I'm a little rusty. So I also have been very busy, so I haven't really been playing too many games here recently. I just moved to a new location, so that's been taking up most of my time. I actually just set up Kernstown from Revolution Games over the weekend, started playing that a little bit. Uh, but it's amazing how those things keep you away from the game time. So regardless, I've had a lot of requests from people on Facebook, Board Game Geek, YouTube, wanting a video on the order system. I've been somewhat hesitant to do it for a number of reasons. Number one, I've been busy, obviously. But more importantly, there's a lot of stuff to cover here, and there's a little bit of ambiguity involved with the order system. I don't want to screw it up, mainly, and I don't want to miss important information or explain something incorrectly, especially for new players. There's a lot of rabbit holes that I might find myself going down. We're going to try to avoid that and keep things as clear-cut as I can. I actually put a little bit more effort into how I'm actually laying these videos out because I need to explain it, I think, in a fluid fashion. Previously, everything I did is off the cuff, but this time I kind of have a cheat sheet that's helping guide me through the process, and I can arrange my thoughts to present the order system how it should be presented. Hopefully for new players, if you're on the fence about the system, whatever the case might be, you should find this video pretty helpful. Experienced players, it might be good as a refresher. As always, if you find something where I made an error, please tell me so that I can either put it in the comments section on the YouTube video or figure out how to edit the video or something. But we won't cover everything. I'm going to try to hit most of the main points. Don't use this as a replacement for the rule book because I'm not going to be able to probably go over every little tiny thing in there. But if you skim the rules and watch this, you should have a pretty good handle of how the order system works. The first thing we're going to go over is kind of just talk about an intro to command and control, more generally in these style of games, but also for line of battle specifically. Then I want to talk about commands. And when we talk about commands, those are going to be actual formations of units that are accepting orders and undertaking tasks, not I command you to do this or I command you to do that. Then we're going to talk about the command phase and the actual orders themselves. And I'm guessing the next video, if this is a two-part thing, is likely going to be talking about initiative and hopefully some implementation of the orders for certain situations, some tactics, and maybe getting a little bit more into why people have problems with the ambiguity and stuff like that. If you want to follow along in the rules, or you want to look at the sections that we're talking about in the rules, you want to look at the Line of Battle Rulebook version 2.0, and you want to go to section 10.0. So that'll have most of the information that we're going to be discussing right here. So as an introduction to command and control, we need to talk about what the orders are in line of battle game, any games in the line of battle series. The order system is basically a subgroup of game mechanics used by the player to control forces on the map at any time. The way it works is pretty simple. Players assign various goals to certain formations under his control. Done in the form of a written order, these orders contain basic information such as whether the formation is attacking or moving in column, where they're going, and how they're going to do it. When I play, I physically write these orders out on a sheet of paper. If you're playing solo, you can do it however you want, but you want to be writing them down if you're going to be playing with other people. That's what the rulebook actually says to do. So during the command phase, players make command rolls with their leaders to determine how efficient their army is in implementing the tactical plan that has been laid out by you, the player. Leader ratings and capabilities, force composition, geographic constraints. These are all variables that will come into play in determining how effective your army is actually going to be. In layman's terms, you're going to assign objectives, make die rolls to see if they can undertake the orders, and then those orders are going to dictate when, why, and how the player controls his pieces on the map. So we need an order system for a number of reasons. The most obvious answer is that we need a way to limit the ability of the player to freely control every unit of their army at all times. This is a game, and players physically sit at a table with the disposition of forces displayed in front of them. Unless you're playing a double-blind setup, which would be awesome, the player, unlike the historical general you're attempting to represent, has perfect information. So let's be clear here, this is important. The player is the overall commanding general. I think Dean wrote it somewhere, I can't remember if it was Consim World or maybe it's in the rules or someplace like that, but he really wants you to know that the headspace of the player is the commanding general. Battlefield uncertainty and chaos factors into how quickly you, as the commanding general, are going to be able to react to developing situations. When you have a game that's at the regimental scale, an element of indecision and randomness has to be addressed to properly model this style of combat. Other games might do it with like a chip pull system, activation rolls. There's a couple different ways that you can do it. Bottom line, though, is you cannot allow the player to have unlimited ability to control the forces that they have in front of them. It's going to lead to a less immersive experience, and it ultimately breaks the simulation for the battle that you're trying to portray. Line of battle is different for a number of reasons. Its system for representing this battlefield chaos requires players to plan ahead without fully understanding what the battlefield situation is going to look like in future turns. A player could hypothetically write an order for a formation on turn 1, and it might not get accepted for another 7 or 8 turns, meaning the instructions on that order might now be obsolete when the general that accepts them goes to undertake them. It brings me to the biggest point of contention with how the series handles command and control. Orders, once accepted, must be acted upon in good faith by the player. We'll talk about this more later, but understand that this leads to some ambiguity and gray area as to how players might implement their orders in certain situations. They're not always going to be black and white, and it's up to the player to respect the spirit of the intended action. Campaign games where the system really shines aren't intended for tournament play, in my opinion, and there has to be a mutual understanding of trust and judgment kind of between the players. I've not really found it to be an issue in my games, but I'd recommend not playing with people that can't abide by those constraints. I will note that the way it's set up makes it great for solo play, because you can go and play one side, interpret those orders, undertake them to their full extent, and then switch sides and do the exact same thing for the other side, just to kind of see how things run into each other. So one final note here before we actually start looking at the map and some things. My buddy Jack once described the LOB order system to me as similar to a wind-up toy. The player controls the overall plan assigned to the moving parts of their army and winds those parts up via orders. As the orders are disseminated, accepted, and implemented, the player loses control and the toy starts moving ahead. Leaders refuse to act, units will stall on their attacks, formations will move into unforeseen hazardous conditions, and ultimately your grand plan to flank the enemy and break them down will dissolve into piecemeal assaults and failed attacks. So your formations are going to run out of steam or need new orders, just as the toy winds itself down to a stop. When it does, you can rewind it and the process starts again. I think this analogy really hits the nail on the head because the player controls everything at the beginning. You let it go, and then from there, things go off the rails that are out of your control. If you can't accept that as a player, then it's not a good system for you. Okay, so here we are. Before we get started, just real quick, I want to mention I've been having some issues with the program that I use to do the screen recording. It's OBS something or another. I don't know, I'm not a tech person, but I did figure this out. Unfortunately, it keeps giving me some sort of encoding error, so I've been moving counters. This will be the third or fourth time I've tried to do this segment. I think I got it to where it looks clear. It might not be as good as some of the other videos. I apologize. Unfortunately, I don't know how to fix it, so it's been so long since I've done them. I'm kind of trying to get back into the rhythm of how this goes. So before we talk explicitly about orders themselves, we need to understand a few concepts and terms here. Among the most important of these terms is going to be what are called commands. Now, reading from the rules here, 10.1, commands are the working blocks of the Army as seen by the Army commander. Command here denotes a formation with its own headquarters. That's important. It does not mean to give orders. It is an object, not an instruction. So when we talk about commands here, we're going to be talking about the forces that are directly under the player's control. A command can consist of multiple formations. When we talk about formations, these are usually going to be a description of regiments or batteries into a larger unit. A formation could be a brigade, might be a division, artillery battalion, whatever it could be, it's going to be. The Army commander is always going to issue orders directly to a command, never its subformations. A command will always have a corresponding headquarters counter unless otherwise noted in game-specific rules. A command is not limited to a certain formation size. Commonly, they're going to be divisional or corps. If we look at the map here, just real quick to show you an example of a command, we have James Longstreet, who's sitting on the 1st Corps headquarters. Underneath him, he has the formation of McLaw's division, which is then made up of brigades, Hood's division, made up of brigades, and Pickett's division, made up of brigades. All the Confederates that you see on the map here are considered one command, and that command is the 1st Corps HQ. Other games, None But Heroes, you'll see a lot of those headquarters counters at the divisional size. So Hood, McLaws, D.H. Hill, Evans, D.R. Jones in that game. It's going to give the Confederate player more moving pieces to potentially issue orders to. So now that we know what a command is, we need to talk about command radius. Think of command radius as defining how far a particular leader can exert control over his forces. Formations within command range operate normally, meaning the player can freely rearrange, shuffle, move, fight. There's a few restrictions. We'll discuss those later. But for the most part, the player's free within command radius to move as they please. This is also very important because this is a rule that I missed for a long time. Each command headquarters is the starting point for its formation's command radius. So in this instance, we're looking at the 1st Corps. The command radius for the entire command emanates from the headquarters. I was mistaken when I first learned the series and thought it was the leader. Longstreet is actually going to be able to move wherever he wants to around the map, but he never is going to be part of the command radius chain. So McLaws, if we pull up the charts here, we'll notice that from a Corps headquarters, the hex range, and note this is hex range, not movement, is going to be 12. From the division to a brigade is 8. From a brigade to a regiment is going to be 6. So if we zoom out a little bit, you can see that Hood could potentially be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. From there, his brigades could string out even further down, and the regiments even further. That's a pretty large area to be operating in. When you look at a map as big as something like Last Chance for Victory, it looks a little bit smaller because this is a very large battle. Just understand that in order to move the ranges or the command radius of where your formations are going to be able to operate, we need to move the headquarters. That's where the order system comes into effect. If the HQ is moved, it's going to affect the actions of all the subordinate formations. When it comes down to it, the underlying reason for the order system is to move the headquarters. If we move the headquarters, that's going to allow us to continue to move the formations within the command radius. Any questions? No? Lovely. Okay, so let's talk about the orders themselves. What is an order? Think of it as a note that's physically written from an army commander to a subordinate leader of a command. This note is going to instruct that command to advance, might be to capture an objective, could be just to move to a specific terrain feature that's on the map. An order can be written as detailed or brief as needed, but it must include certain information. Now, I've listed all of these up here for you to look at, and we're going to go over them here with a little bit more detail. So hang with me. Let's take a look at the map here. So firstly, we need to determine what type of order we're going to write. We have two options here. It can either be an attack order or a move order. There are no other order types. Anytime you write an order, it's going to be one of those two. Now, if you have a command that's not under orders currently and it's in a stationary defensive position, those commands are called no orders. They are going to be able to move within their command radius, but they're not going to be able to take offensive action to gain territory. Attack orders are going to instruct one of our commands to move to some location and seize terrain from the enemy. Attack orders are required for offensive operations against enemy troops. Alternatively, move orders are simply going to instruct us to change locations without the ability to assault enemy positions. A move order, in effect, simply is going to specify a hex in which the command headquarters is to move to. Those are very easy, self-explanatory. One thing to keep in mind is that a restriction with a move order is that all of your infantry needs to move in column formation, and that's going to leave them very exposed to enemy movements or whatever the case might be that's happening on map. So if we look at this here, I need to try to find a good zoom level so that you can kind of see what's happening. The Confederate player is probably not going to write an order to Longstreet to move to the Peach Orchard because they're all going to have to get into column, and without knowing what the Union player is under, if he's under orders or not, they might be moving in column towards the Peach Orchard with no way of defending themselves. Now, we'll go over a better situation regarding that here shortly. But there's two options. Know that there's move and attack orders. Secondly, and this is the most important part, is that we need to give textual instructions for each command or formation involved in the order. It's not important to get worked up about having to write down intricate instructions. If you're playing solo, then you get to decide how you're going to do it. It really comes down to player preference. Requirements state that a precise objective must be stated, and you have to specify a route which is to be taken by the command to achieve its objective. The order must have only one objective per command, but formations within that command may have more defined instructions to achieve it. So what does that mean? Well, we'll go over that here in a sec. Remember, as we stated, the purpose of an order is to put a command's headquarters in motion. Personally, I'm in the habit of specifying which hex the headquarters is going to move to under the order, but note that the headquarters can always trail its formations under an attack order and bolt itself to the ground in a desired location upon completion of the order. Let me also note, because I don't know if I stated it before, if we have commands that are under no orders, so for instance, if Longstreet and the 1st Corps HQ are under no orders right now, they are going to be the first Corps HQ is going to be bolted in position. This is very important because when we look at skedaddles, if your headquarters is overrun by enemy troops, it's going to force your command to skedaddle. So the hexes that you're choosing to bolt your HQs down is very important. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at an example of an attack order. This will give you a good idea of the two different ways that you can write an attack order. The first one we're going to do is a little bit more intricate, and it has a little bit more information. So let's say I'm playing as General Lee. I write an order to General Longstreet, and it's written like this. Advance your corps aggressively east along the Millerstown Road to take and hold the John Munschauer House. If we look here, the John Munschauer House is down here. Oh, load up. You can see that it's kind of situated behind these Union troops that are all aligned along the Millerstown Road. Longstreet's over here. Pickett's division is to deploy to the left of the road to sweep Weikert's Wood in its advance. So there's Weikert's Woods. McLaw's division is to deploy along the road itself, and Hood's division to the right of the road to sweep Houck's Ridge. So here's Houck's Ridge. We've got Hood being ordered to move this way. McLaw's ordered to move down the road. Place your Corps HQ at the John Weikert House, which is right here. So the way I just described that attack order has all the pertinent information. I could also write it as a second example and say Longstreet's Corps attack east along the Millerstown Road to take and hold Hex 1744, which is the John Munschauer House. Both of those have the information that's needed for the order, but the first example provides more detailed instructions for the arrangement of the attacking formations. So in this instance, there's 3 divisions in the Corps. And Longstreet, because these orders are spelled out, must abide by these rules. Regardless of whether the player thinks the formation arrangement is optimal, he has to make an effort to do as instructed. So if we look here, let me grab this. If I was better at this, I would have it planned out. So the second example is very straightforward. The player is going to be able to choose how he goes about achieving that objective. As long as he attacks east along the Millerstown Road, he can do as he pleases. However, the first order, as stated, specified that McLaw's, let's see here, deployed Pickett's division to the left of the road to sweep Weikert's Woods. So Pickett is going to have to move and deploy towards the start of these arrows and move in a general direction down this way. McLaw's, his division, is going to have to move in a general direction this way, and Hood is to be on the right flank and move in a general direction this way. Now, you'll notice that this example puts more restrictions on the Corps being ordered to attack. The second example is going to allow the player to do what they want, and this is going to take me a little bit down a rabbit hole here. I want to discuss both ways of issuing orders. From the standpoint of competitiveness, the second example, the easier example, is likely a better option because it gives the player more freedom in adjusting to a developing battlefield. Remember that these orders are not undertaken instantaneously in most cases. Longstreet might accept the order 6 turns after it's issued to him and realize that his main threat exists directly along the Millerstown Road, in which case he can assign Hood, who I think is probably his best division, to advance directly along the road. If we look at the Union defense, we can note that most of the forces that we're going to have to push out of the way to take the John Munschauer House are situated right along that advance along the Millerstown Road. The flanks to the south and to the north are a little less defended. This way of issuing orders is perfectly acceptable if you just give a broad order, as long as it has a route, a objective, and a general heading, you're in good shape. But it does lack a certain flair and doesn't necessarily convey the vision of the Army commander at the time of issue. Now, maybe the Army commander doesn't care and just says, Corps, go do this. Perfectly fine. Alternatively, the example that's more detailed certainly conveys how the Army commander pictures the attack in his mind. As a player, I find myself writing these sorts of orders more often. This style definitely helps define my course of action as the Corps commander when I put that hat on, and it eliminates a lot of the ambiguity that might arise during play as to what I can and can't do. It's a little less vague. I'm being forced to deploy in certain locations with not many objectives, but I need to sweep Weikert's Woods, I need to sweep Houck's Ridge, and I have, certain constraints that I'm held to. I cannot understate that some of my most memorable experiences in the system have been team games where the Army commander, say me, envisions a maneuver and the receiving Corps commander, somebody else, does not necessarily execute the assignment as I originally intended. More detail from the Army commander might have been needed to correctly convey exactly what I wanted to do to my Corps commander. Less detail is definitely going to give that player more freedom to act on his own understanding of what's trying to be accomplished. But in the team circumstances, I like to use a little bit more detail. I'll even throw in descriptors of how much force I want to be applied to an attack. It has absolutely nothing to do with the game rules. But I'll, say attack with aggression or advance cautiously or hold this position, attack it, and take it at all costs. That way my Corps commander really knows I want you to push the envelope here, maybe take it easy. These sorts of things aren't necessary, like I said, for the system to work, but they definitely add a level of immersion and force the player to act more as a subordinate general, following and interpreting an order that's, maybe arrived via courier, rather than they're not just a player with a bird's eye view of every optimal decision to be made. So understand that when you're undertaking these attack orders, you are bound to what's written on them. You can't just go off and do something totally different. If I specify where these divisions are going to be aligned, they have to do that. So on to the next thing. So the last component of an order is going to be clarifying any condition assigned to it. Players can't use the clock to specify when an order is supposed to start, but you can use first light or the first twilight turn of the day. You can specify that an order needs to begin when another command attacks, so you're trying to coordinate something, or you can specify some time period after another command attacks, and that's only in half-hour and hour-long increments. So saying attack at 9:30 a.m. is not legal because it specifies a time on the clock. Using the same example that we had above, you could say when Heath's division begins to attack, Longstreet's corps is to attack east along the Millerstown Road to take and hold 1744. That's perfectly legal. So Longstreet's waiting for Heath to begin his attack, then he can do it. Easy enough? Cool. Let's go ahead and start talking about how we implement the orders. So we know what an order looks like, and we know what it can and cannot specify. Now we need to talk about the process of getting orders to their recipients for implementation. Insert the command phase. This is where we're going to be talking about everything that happens within the command phase. If we take a look at the sequence of play over here, you'll see the command phase is going to be our first order of business every turn. Within the phase, orders is the first thing that's going to happen. So at this point in the turn, we're going to attempt to accept any orders which may have arrived to our commands, and we're also going to see if our Army commander can maybe write a new order. So first things first, let's clarify what a command role is. If you're looking at 10.6 in the rulebook, that states orders are created and accepted using a command role on the command role table. This same table and role are used to send, accept, and create orders. Roll 2 dice based on the leader's command value, add any applicable modifiers, and read the result. So if we're looking at our command roll table, you'll see that anything that's rolled 9 or less, including the command value of the leader, is going to be a failure. Anything 10 or more is going to be a success. So using that command roll, let's walk through the process of Robert E. Lee issuing an order to James Longstreet and James Longstreet accepting it, disseminating it to his divisions, and attacking with his command. We're going to use that same order, the more elaborate order that we used as an example previously. So, Robert E. Lee I have placed on map way up here. He's a pretty good distance away from Longstreet's command. Let's say he rolls a 10. He adds his command value, which in this instance is a 4, for 14. He's able to write an order. He writes the order to Longstreet. Let's say that the time is, let's say it's 8 o'clock. So we're 8 o'clock. Now we need to determine what time is that order going to arrive at Longstreet's headquarters. Well, there's a couple things that we need to look at. Every game is going to specify the Army CO's awareness in the game-specific rules. So in this instance, let's pretend that Lee is a normal commander. This game actually has a pretty cool rule where Lee can go on fire, but the Confederates have to do some major damage to start the battle. Let's pretend Lee's just normal in this instance. So to determine how many turns is this order going to take to get to Longstreet's headquarters, we take a look at the Army CO's awareness, and then we're going to add a distance. So Longstreet is definitely not within 20 hexes of Lee's command radius. Lee is an Army headquarters. So he's beyond command radius, which is going to add 2 turns, or he's beyond command radius and he's 50 or more hexes away. Let me figure out what he is here. He is not beyond 50 hexes. So normal awareness is going to be 2 turns plus the 2 for beyond command radius. That means that this order is going to arrive at Longstreet's headquarters at the 9 o'clock hour. So let's pretend it's 9 o'clock. Longstreet's at his headquarters during the command phase. We're going to see if Longstreet can accept this order. So we would say, okay, Longstreet's got an order. We're going to see if he can accept it. If we make a 2d6, Longstreet rolls an 8. He adds his 2. That's a 10. It is a successful acceptance. So Longstreet is now under those orders. The command now has orders. If he would have failed that roll, that order will just sit at the headquarters until next turn. In every subsequent turn, Longstreet is going to make that roll to see if he accepts those orders. This is where that command value really comes in handy for your corps commanders and your divisional commanders. If you have those 0 and 1 rated leaders, you could be sitting here rolling for a very long time to get them to do anything. You might be able to write the best orders in the world, but unless you can roll for the acceptance or even the generation of the orders, you're going to be in trouble and you're not doing much. So that's an area where the game is going to take some control away from you. You're going to be a little bit at the mercy of the die rolls that you're doing during the command phase. So this is going to be an important part of attack orders that we need to talk about right here. So hang with me. Longstreet accepted his orders. The order is going to send McLaw's division down the Millerstown Road, Hood to the right of the Millerstown Road, and Pickett to the left of the Millerstown Road. Now, within line of battle, if a corps commander accepts an order, he is forced to disseminate those orders down to the divisional level. The divisional formations, the leader of those formations, then has to make a command roll. Now, the distance modifier is going to come into effect here. So Longstreet, being that he just accepted this order, can't then get it instantaneously to all of his commanders. Those are going to show up at their divisional headquarters, which bear with me, there's not a headquarters counter on map. It's just insinuated it's their staff is kind of with their counter. Those orders are going to show up, likely would be the next turn. If we look at the charts, so command radius, within command radius, yep, everybody's within command radius of the core. It's going to take a turn for that order then to get to each one of these divisional commanders. So let's say we go to the 9:15 turn. Now we're going to have to roll for each one of these individual divisions to see if they're going to accept the attack order. Let's roll for McLaws. He is a 3. He rolls a 9 plus 3, 12. He is going to instantaneously be under that attack order. This turn, he's going to be able to start to move under that order. So he's going to be moving towards the Millerstown Road, deploying and starting his attack. Let's roll for Hood. He's a 10 roll with a 4. He's going to be taking part in the attack as well. He's going to be moving to the right of the Millerstown Road, deploying adjacent to McLaws and starting his advance. Let's roll for Pickett. Pickett is a 2. Pickett, 5 plus 2 is a 7. He will not be taking part in this attack this turn. So Pickett's not going to be able to move until he now accepts the order. This dynamic really creates havoc with your orders because it's almost impossible to get divisional leaders all doing what you want them to do simultaneously. In this instance, we have 2 pretty good divisions that are going to start taking off, and this will end up being a pretty good attack. Pickett, eventually, having a 2 as his command rating, he's eventually going to be able to get in on the attack. But you can see how time and the variable of the die rolls for the acceptance really can start to play havoc with what you're doing on your attack orders. One thing to note is acceptance of a move order does not require dissemination down to the divisional level. So if this were a move order that came to Longstreet that said, move your headquarters down to 3605, somewhere down here, let's say we wanted to get on the flank of the Union, Longstreet accepts it, everybody else can instantly start to do it. The divisional leaders do not have to roll to accept a move order. Okay, it would appear with all my rambling, I'm approaching the limit of what I'm able to upload. Don't know why it limits me to how long I can do it, but usually the size of the file is too large if I get past 40 minutes or so. So we're definitely going to move on to the second video here. Now in the second video, the first thing we're really going to focus on is I want to talk about attack recovery and fluke stoppage. So we'll finish out the command phase and the implementation of orders. And then I think we're going to get into some examples. I'll try to whip up some examples to show you some ways that you can use move and attack orders efficiently. And then I'm going to spend quite a long time talking about initiative and reserves. Those are going to be some other rules that are very important to the order system in line of battle. But hopefully this was somewhat helpful. Should give you a general idea of how the order system works. Once again, attack recovery and fluke stoppage will be the first thing we start in the next video. Till then, I'll try to get that done as soon as possible. We'll see if I can get this uploaded. Let me know if I screwed anything up, please. I will attempt to try to edit it if I can. We'll see.